Vampires are some of the most feared and elusive creatures throughout ancient and modern times. The mythology of numerous cultures around the world all feature a vampiric archetype, and Greece may be considered one of the first. Join me as we delve into the dark history of the Vrykolakas. The Greek vampire is a fearsome reanimated creature that becomes more powerful the longer it is allowed to feed. Belief in the Vrykolakas was widespread in Greece, particularly in rural regions, up until the mid-20th century. But many still believe that the Vrykolakas lurks in the shadows to this day. The term Vrykolakas, and the figure itself, originated from neighboring Slavic countries, where vampire legends are widespread throughout folklore, and equally feared. The Slavic word Vrkolak, actually meaning werewolf, is the source of many terms for vampire-like figures throughout Eastern Europe and the Balkans, and has come to represent vampires in most Slavic countries. Similarly, the Lamia is a spine-chilling ancient Greek female shapeshifter who consumes human flesh, particularly children. Perhaps most famously, Lamia was portrayed in Greek playwright Aristophanes' 5th century BC comedy, Peace. The ancient commentaries on Aristophanes' play explain the role Lamia played in Greek mythology. She was a queen of what is now Libya who was beloved by Zeus, the greatest of all the Greek gods. When Zeus's wife, Hera, robbed her of her children from this union, Lamia went on a killing spree, destroying every child she could lure into her power. Athenian mothers were even known to use her as a threat to frighten children who were misbehaving. The Mormo, or Fearful One, resembles Lamia, as she is also a female spirit that is said to consume children. The Strix, referred to a flesh-eating mythical bird, that resembles a mix of an owl and a bat. The bird creature is nocturnal, with a large, pointed beak and fearsome claws. It is said to eat infants, and is even thought to be a witch in disguise. In Greek folklore, there are many ways that one could transform into a Vrykolakas. Most often, people who were excommunicated from the church for sacrilegious behavior, and those who were buried in unconsecrated ground, were believed to transform into vampires. During World War II, Greece suffered the Great Famine, during which 300,000 people starved to death. The sheer number of dead, during that time, caused cemeteries to overflow, and many people were forced to bury their loved ones outside graveyards, in mass graves. This caused great distress across the country, as belief in the Vrykolakas was so ingrained, many Greeks feared that their relatives would become vampires, because they were not buried in cemeteries. Tragically, some families were so scared of the horrific transformation, that they even beheaded the corpses of their loved ones before burial to avoid them ever becoming vampires. In some regions, people believed that eating the meat from a sheep that had been wounded by a wolf or a werewolf could cause the vampiric transformation. Legend states that the body of the Vrykolakas, although dead, does not decay, but becomes quite stocky and takes on a healthy ruddy complexion, due to its diet of flesh and liver. This is quite different from modern descriptions of vampires as pale and sickly in appearance. Those with red hair and light eyes were often suspected of being vampires, as they resembled Slavic peoples, whose folklore was full of such figures. Vampires in Greece were thought to bring great destruction to villages. They were described as nomadic figures that roamed the country, in search of victims to torment and feed upon. In many stories, a Vrykolakas is even described as bringing diseases and epidemics to villages across Greece. He is said to kill his victims by sitting on them, or crushing them as they sleep, and later feeding on their flesh and organs, particularly the liver. The most persistent Greek vampire legend, one that many still believe in rural Greece today, involves knocking on doors. In Greek folklore, the Vrykolakas roams around villages, knocking on doors and calling out the names of those who live inside. If no one answers the initial knock, the vampire will go on to the next house without causing harm. If someone opens the door, the Vrykolakas will cause them to die a few days later, and they too will become a vampire. This is why in certain Greek villages today, residents will only answer their door after a second knock, rather than after the first. In order to kill the Vrykolakas, one must attempt to destroy its body, by impaling it, beheading it, or cremating the vampire while it sleeps in its grave. This only occurs on Saturdays. By destroying the body of the creature, it is believed that the person is freed from living eternally as the Vrykolakas, and can now rest. Archaeologists have discovered many graves across Greece, particularly from the Ottoman period. These graves demonstrate how widespread the belief in vampires was, throughout the country. A tomb, found on the island of Lesvos, during the Ottoman period, contained a body with nails pierced through its neck, pelvis, and feet, pinning it to its grave. In order to keep vampires away, Greeks had a variety of items and practices used to keep supernatural creatures such as vampires subdued. Burying a corpse face down, or putting scythes near the grave to prevent any demons or evil spirits from entering the body, were thought to prevent transformation into a vampire, in Greece. Greeks would also place a small wax cross and pieces of pottery with the words, "Jesus Christ conquers," in the grave to ward off evil. This practice resembles the ancient Greek tradition of placing a coin in the corpse's mouth, both to pay their toll across the river Styx and to ward off evil spirits. The Spanish scholar, Álvaro García Marín, wrote in 2016, that if we were to judge from the standpoint of a Western European of 1730 or 1820, Dracula without any doubt, should have been Greek. At the beginning of the 18th century, when the Slavic vampire was still unknown in the West, the Greek, Vrykolakas, had been recurring in theological stories, travel accounts, and books on occultism, from the beginning of the 16th century. And that concludes this video. If you enjoyed watching, then please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And to help keep the content coming, be sure to send through a donation via Patreon, it's greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching.